up, guys? Welcome back to Becoming Dr. Kaluba. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I really appreciate you guys. I know I haven't posted content in a hot minute. A lot has been going on, honestly, and things have just been unstable for a while, but I'm finally in a stable place, and I thought to get back to my channel and share with you guys all the content that I have prepared for you, that I hope will be helpful to your journey. As you probably already know, or if this is your first time tuning into my channel, I am Zambian. I'm currently based in the US. I just graduated actually this past August with a bachelor's degree in biology with a concentration in biomedical sciences and an emphasis in pre-medicine. And so I thought to share with you guys, especially for my fellow international students out there, or if you are considering studying abroad, I thought to share with you guys what my journey has been like. And so that's why I titled this video, Why Study in the US. I thought to share my experience with you guys, what my application process was like, how I decided to study in the US, and what my experience has been since, and the things that could potentially benefit you guys even as you are probably deciding on where to pursue your higher education. Let's get into this video. To start by giving you guys a little background of myself. I completed my high school and graduated with a high school diploma in 2015 from Mary Queen of Peace Girls School in Lusaka, Zambia. Now, at the time, I didn't really have any solid plans of studying abroad. It was sort of like a wish in my mind. I had one particular university in mind, and it's based in the United States, but at the time I didn't even know how the education system ran in the US. But there was this one university I had in mind. It's in California, and it's called Loma Linda University. And I really liked to envision the idea of myself being there. But it wasn't something that I had solid plans for, really. So I didn't even do like much research as to like how to get it. Like I didn't think about it like that. If anything, I more so thought that I would be attending my higher education schooling at the University of Zambia, UNZA. And so but at the time, my cousin was actually pursuing medicine there. She was already, I think, at Ridgeway campus in her 4th or 5th year during that time. I'm not sure which. But she had taken this program prior. She had pursued her Edexcel A-levels prior to getting into med school, and it was a 1-year, 6-month program, which allowed her to go straight into her 2nd year of natural sciences or medicine. And so that was the route that she encouraged me to take, and I decided to apply within the same year when I completed my high school education. I decided to apply at the University of Zambia for the Edexcel A-levels program. I used my mock exam results, I believe, for that. Because grade 12 results were not out yet. They were out the next year. And so I applied to that program, and I remember once I applied to them, I prayed, I asked God. Side note, I am a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, and so I talk about God a lot in my videos. Expect that, because I'm a Christian. And I just believe God has a very active role in my life. So but when I applied to the A-levels program, I remember I prayed, I asked God that if he really wanted me to pursue medicine, I would get accepted. And I left it at that. I forgot that I actually applied. And I remember receiving a notification from the A-levels office saying that I had gotten accepted into the program. And so I did the 1 year, 6 months program. And during that time, I learned so much about how I wanted to go about pursuing my higher education. And so being there really exposed me to the kind of like dynamic that was present at the University of Zambia, especially when it came to natural sciences, because the professors that I had were professors who also taught chemistry, biology, math, and physics to the students who had enrolled in NS. So it really was an eye-opener for me as to how I wanted to go about my higher education. And I had decided during that time that I did not want to study in Zambia. And I'll be honest with you about the things that led me to that decision. Firstly, I realized that a number of professors, which is something that my cousin had also told me about, but a number of professors really didn't have the heart to teach you, to really share what they knew willingly with you. It was more of a thing of wanting to sieve you out, and also wanting to make sure you went through what they went through during the time when they were learning. And that kind of mindset was something that I just did not agree with. I believe that if I learned something, it is my responsibility to share it with someone else, and I should take joy in sharing that with someone else and not hoard the information to myself. And so that was something that I just did not agree with. I know some professors, you know, beyond A-levels would also do things like, you know, brag about their educational background and deliberately make tests impossible to pass, you know, just so students would fail or to give students a hard time, which to me is just ridiculous. And that kind of mindset I came to learn, you know, was found through the whole process. And I said, yeah, including doctors as far as the university teaching hospital. And so I said, yeah, no, I don't want to go through this, especially if I have options, you know, to pursue what I love in a more convenient environment. I should be able to take them. And so, yeah, that was one of the things that I didn't like. Two, at the time, there were a number of riots at UNZA. And I thank God the one day that we had riots at UNZA, I was home. But yeah, there were riots at UNZA pretty often, and there would be indefinite closures as a result of those riots. And I just envisioned myself in that kind of environment, and I just said, no, I don't want my learning process to be affected by riots that I'm not even spearheading. And so, yeah, I understood why the riots would happen, the cause of it, but I just didn't want to be a part of that if I had options to pursue what I love without the indefinite closures attached to those things. The living conditions also at UNZA just were not anything I found welcoming. And yeah, I really just wanted to experience something different. I wanted to experience a different educational system. And at the time, I remember there weren't many other options within the country, you know, that carried the same weight when it came to the name that the university had. And so, yeah, it was just very limiting. And yeah, that was when I started to consider the idea of studying abroad. I'm really grateful because my parents were also very supportive and on board with what I wanted to do. My mom initially was not as on board with it because she wanted me closer to home. But I'm grateful that both of them eventually were very supportive of me pursuing my studies out of the country. And so that was when I started looking into those options. Initially, I was very excited at the idea of studying in the UK. Also, Zambia follows a British standard of education. And so the transition between Zambia and the UK wasn't something I thought would be too bad, just because it's pretty much the same thing. When it comes to like your pursuit of medicine in Zambia, for those of you who may not be Zambian, you apply to the University of Zambia, select the school to which you would like to be enrolled. So you have your first and second and third selections, I believe. I don't know if that's still the case today. But yeah, you have your first, second, and third options. And so you want to place the school that you really want to get into as your first option. And the selection process will go depending on different factors, really, your grades, space, and all those things. But yeah, you apply to the schools. The school that would allow you to lead to the School of Medicine in Zambia is Natural Sciences. So you, in your first year, you have people who are just STEM, engineers, biologists, microbiologists, doctors, or want to be doctors. They're all in that same group. And then your receiving process sort of starts after your first year. And then I think it's second year you do your examinations, and then go into third year where like your route is pretty much defined. I believe second year you're split between those who want to pursue medicine and engineering, and then you proceed. But pretty much your route is set, really. Your entry into like medicine, or as you proceed over the years, is dependent on how well you do. But once you start through the natural sciences route, you pretty much follow through with the route. How you fare really guides or determines whether or not you will stick within the School of Medicine. But yeah, if that makes sense. And so yeah, that's typically how the British system works. And so that was one of the things that encouraged me to apply or to want to study in the UK. Also, there are a number of schools in the UK that have a good reputation. And so I thought, yeah, I'd really like to experience something different. And I also like the idea of being exposed to a totally different culture. I really wanted to learn what it's like to live in a different environment, to gain a different worldview or perspective altogether. So yeah, that was what made me start thinking of studying abroad. Alright, so when it came to deciding on a college, so the things that guided what my decisions were regarding which college to go to had to do with my personal beliefs and what I was wanting to get out of my college experience. So for one, I had mentioned already that I wanted to study in the UK. Another thing that I forgot to mention was that I have family there. Family that at the time I had not met yet, close family. And so I was very excited at the prospect of meeting those family members, and they were very welcoming. And my uncle, actually, one of the family members there, was very persistent in making sure that I already had things ready. All that he was waiting for was hearing that I had gotten into a school there. So I was very excited at the idea of schooling there because of that. But my personal beliefs came into play because one of the things that you are required to do, at least at the time that I was applying, you were required to do as an international student in order to study in the UK was take the IELTS English test for UK visa students. So the test at the time, I'm not sure if it's still like this, but at the time the test was only taken on a Saturday, and this is a mandatory test that you have to take for you to get your UK visa. And so it was only taken on Saturdays everywhere in the world. And so personally, the idea of taking the IELTS test on a Saturday did not sit well with my beliefs, just because it felt like I would be prioritizing my school and securing my future and trying to get to a place I really wanted to on a day that is just for me and God, and prioritizing just worshiping God in a way that I don't do on other days of the week. And so that just did not sit well with me. And, I strongly believe that God is in control of my future. He knows what He has set out for me, and He created me with a purpose. And so the idea of me doing everything, to get to this outcome that I had wished for myself, even if it meant me going against my personal beliefs, that Saturday being a Sabbath is a day for God that I should remember, it just didn't sit well with my spirit. And so I just didn't do it. I trusted that, God who knows my future, God who created me, must have a plan for me that doesn't involve me going against what I believe His law is. And so, yeah, I didn't take that IELTS test. I did take the other IELTS test. So there are two IELTS tests that you could take. There is the IELTS for UK visa and the IELTS for non-UK visa. The IELTS for non-UK visa could help you apply to schools in other countries, including the US. Some institutions do accept the IELTS English proficiency test results. Others take some accept just the SAT, others will take the TOEFL exam. But yeah, IELTS will allow you to gain access, or rather prove your English proficiency in countries like the Netherlands, Australia. I'm trying to think of any other countries that I may have looked at, but those were the two prime examples. But yeah, definitely check it out. Yeah. But yeah, so I decided to take that one because I was planning on applying to schools in the Netherlands and Australia. But my heart just wasn't in it because I had set my sights on the UK, but there was this conflict because my personal beliefs just didn't agree with it. And I had searched high and low for things to work out. I really tried everything, but it just didn't work. And so I had reached a point where I was just in a slump because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where I was supposed to be. I knew that I was not going to be studying in Zambia, but I just didn't know where I was going to end up. And so I remember my mom had talked to me and she asked me what my expectations were. And we had discussed how I felt and, what I really wanted, what outcome I really wanted. And I remember she asked me if I had thought of applying to the US, and specifically Andrews University. And so that really didn't cross my mind much, especially because at the time, pre-Brexit, I really liked the idea of studying in the UK, also because it seemed quieter than the US. The US to me was too active and too loud and too involved in so much. I just didn't see myself fitting in to the country's culture as a whole. But yeah, so she asked me, like, have you considered applying to Andrews University? So Andrews University is a Seventh-day Adventist affiliated institution in the United States. It's based in Berrien Springs, Michigan. And so at the time, I hadn't even considered applying to that school. She thought of it because it's a university that is pretty spoken about at church. At the church that I went to, I had heard of it. In addition to Loma Linda University. But yeah, I had heard of it, but didn't really pay much mind to it. And so I started doing my research on Andrews University, and then started to learn the differences in the British and the American education systems. And so from that point, one of the things I learned, especially wanting to pursue medicine, was that in the US, you have to pursue a pre-professional program in order to go ahead to pursue medicine, dentistry, and law. If I'm not mistaken, it's just those three. There could be an additional one that I may be missing, but as far as I know, it's just those three. So you could pursue any pre-professional degree for your bachelor's, but you definitely do have to meet certain requirements that are needed for, say, medical school. And so that was something very new to me. But I still thought, okay, this is still fine, which meant that in Zambia, for example, medicine is 7 years. In the United States, it's an 8-year thing. Wasn't too much of a difference, but yeah, that's just your bachelor's degree and your medical degree. But yeah, anyway, we'll get into all the other details in another video. But yeah, so those were some things that I got to learn about the differences in the UK versus US education system, or rather the Zambian versus US education system. But I thought it wasn't too bad, and so that was how I ended up applying. But the thing is, I only applied to one university in the US because, again, I wasn't really excited about the idea of studying in the US because it wasn't my first option. And to be quite frank with you, I had reached a point at the time where I felt like I was almost giving up on the application process because I really didn't know. I had really put so much hope in this one location, and when it just conflicted with my personal beliefs, I just couldn't pursue it further. And so yeah, but I remember it was a few days after New Year's in 2018, I got an email saying that I had been accepted at Andrews University. So yeah, but I will tell you that even though I was in the slump that I was in, you know, the fact that I had not pursued studying in the UK because of the conflict between my personal beliefs and my desires, it put a lot of things into perspective for me, because I then started to really think about what kind of learning environment I wanted for myself and the kind of person that I wanted to be after I pursue my bachelor's degree. So what those 4 years would really do to impact me as a person holistically. And so yeah, when I was applying to Andrews University, I started to think about how, you know, I really wanted to be in an environment that facilitated my personal beliefs and where I felt I was at home. And so the fact that I was applying to an Adventist institution, for one, was something that really fit into that. And also, you know, I really like the idea of, you know, being in a space where I could be among people who believe the same things that I do. And at the same time, being exposed to people from diverse cultures. One thing about Andrews University, I know that it ranked #1 nationally for being the most diverse institution in the United States. And so I really liked the idea of, you know, being around people from different cultures because it met my want of being exposed to just different cultures altogether. I really wanted to have a holistic worldview, if that makes sense, a holistic personal worldview. Another thing, one of my best friends actually left for the US a year before I did. And so she had mentioned to me how the professors in the US generally are ever willing to make sure you pass and you do well. You know, they want to share their knowledge with you. And if you recall what I had talked about with the issue that I found with a number of Zambian professors and lecturers was that many of them liked to hoard information. And it wasn't a thing of making sure that they were willing to share what they had, what they knew with other people. It was about making sure you know that they know what they're talking about. And so the idea of like having to be in an institution where, you know, professors are willing to help me, professors want to share what they know, professors want to spew information into you so that you're able to grow and develop in whatever profession you want to be in, was something I found really amazing. So combining, like, you know, my want to be in a space where you know, I can freely share, talk about, and experience my personal growth with just academic growth together, Yeah, it really helped excite me for the idea of studying at Andrews University specifically. So yeah, that's what really helped guide my decision. So a number of things that I've come to learn, like during the 4 years in which I was pursuing my degree, which helped validate my studying in the US, especially in regards to studying medicine or pursuing a career in medicine, was that for starters, between your transition from your bachelor's degree to pursuing medicine, there's certain requirements that you're supposed to meet outside of your academic requirements, such as your volunteer experience. So you are expected to have volunteer hours as well as shadowing hours. You're expected to shadow a doctor or a medical professional, as well as show that you can volunteer in other activities outside of, your typical academic activities, for lack of a better word. But yeah, and so, which is something that I really never heard of back home. Back home, I know most of your emphasis is how well you fare academically, as well as when you're doing hands-on stuff in the hospital, which is important. But I really appreciated what the US brought additionally when it came to their education system, because you are required to be a holistic person even as you're applying to medical schools, and medical admissions boards look for things like that. You could be rejected from medical school even with a 4.0 GPA, because you have nothing else to show for it. When it comes to your volunteer experience, when it comes to your shadowing, they don't know who you are as a person beyond your grades. And so I really appreciated how important that is, because not only does it help you think about, what your personal interests are as a person outside of school, and, what kind of doctor you potentially are going to make, it really makes you think about whether or not you really want to pursue medicine, which is something that I found really, really amazing and needed. Because I remember before I left for the US, I had encountered, different people who talk about studying medicine for different reasons. And many of the people that I had met would talk about studying medicine, for the money, because it brings a lot of, income. And for a bunch of reasons that I personally didn't think were good enough for someone who is going to be handling people's lives, And so I think, to pursue a career in medicine, it requires a different kind of passion, for the career. You need to be passionate about what you're doing. You need to be passionate about people, and helping people. And so if you don't have either and you're more fixated on the money, I don't know how you can survive with medicine. But the thing is, I know that there are people who somehow still make it. But I like the idea of, having to have shadowing hours, because it also prepares you for what you're trying to get yourself into. So sometimes especially when you're good in STEM subjects in high school, many people will tell you oh, you should pursue medicine or engineering. But for the most part, I hear a lot of people tell others to pursue, medicine, become a doctor. It carries a lot of prestige to it. But and sometimes you go into these things very blindly, which is something that I've noticed a lot with freshmen or first years. You go into this blindly because you're good at science, but being good at science alone is not good enough for you to be a doctor, quite frankly, or a medical professional. And so I really appreciate that things like that are requirements for you, because they allow you to really see what it's like and gauge whether or not this is something you really want to pursue and this is something for you. So yeah, that's one thing I appreciated. Another thing is the emphasis on participating in research. Is something I never heard of back home. And I found that very, very interesting, because I think research it's an amazing branch of science, because it allows you to apply what you learn theoretically, practically. And so I really appreciate that it's something that's not only discussed, but something that's done, and you can venture into different forms of research depending on what your personal interests are. And I really appreciated the opportunity to participate in research. So yeah, that was another thing that really stood out for me during my 4 years. Another thing that I liked is back on, the idea of growing holistically. So I know that when you're studying like medicine or on the route of medicine back home in Zambia, you are only studying or taking courses that are specific to medicine. So yeah, it's plain biochemistry. At some point, the emphasis on chemistry drops, math initially, but yeah, it's mostly bio-related courses. Whereas in the US, and I must say this may be a pro or a con depending on the type of person you are, but for me, it was a pro because in the US, you are required to take certain classes that are outside of your major. So some of those courses may be under fitness education. You have religious requirements, as in the case of at the school that I attended, you have certain religious requirements. You have psychology or social science courses to take. You could take business courses as well, depending on what your bulletin states for a specific year and a specific major. You have requirements or course requirements outside of your major that you are to take in order to fulfill your degree requirements. And so I really like that because I'm a person who has multiple interests. I selected biology as my major because I really liked biology. But I'll share more in a separate video about, selecting what kind of major you would like to pursue. But I really like biology and that's what I chose. But I'm also interested in business. I really like arts. I was interested in photography. I really like psychology. I like history. So those are things that I don't have a hard time, in short, enjoying. Because I have multiple interests. And so for me, it really helped buffer what I was doing because in all honesty, taking bio classes, like purely bio classes, which I have done before, through semesters, it's a lot to take in. And sometimes because they're heavy and sometimes you need a buffer. And I really liked that I could have buffers, say in business classes, through fitness classes, which I found great as well, that I could take fitness classes. As well, some people thought it was a pain. I really enjoyed it because with the stress of college, it's just nice to take a fitness class because it gives you the necessary endorphins. So I liked that. I could do that. I could take music classes and all, depending on what my bulletin allows. And so, yeah, that was something that I liked. And also another thing that I really appreciate about the United States education system is that you can choose what you want as a major. So a major essentially is the degree program that you are primarily pursuing. And so, yeah, I know that, say, for example, if you're on the route for medicine in Zambia, your degree program, or rather the degree that you graduate with in your 4th year or after your 4th year, is a bachelor's of science in human biology, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas in the United States, you can graduate with whatever degree program you choose. So it's really up to you depending on what your interests are, which I find really amazing, especially again for someone who has multiple interests. It's nice to have the opportunity to pursue a degree program in whatever major you decide, provided you meet the requirements for the profession that you're trying to pursue ultimately. So I really liked that idea. I ended up choosing biology because it's what I enjoy most. But yeah, I appreciate having the option to choose what I really want to pursue for 4 years, because that's important. It's what you spend most of your time doing, really. So yeah. But yeah, I have so much more to share with you guys regarding what my experiences have been and trying to break that down, especially when it comes to like pre-med and that whole experience in general. But yeah, I thought to share with you guys the different things that I've come to learn in my studying in the US. And hopefully, like the things that I got to learn after being here may help you decide if you are considering applying to schools in the US or studying in the US. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video so far. If you have, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let us grow this channel. And yeah, expect new content from me very soon. I hope you have a great day and happy holidays, guys. Bye.